Commissioner Madden was at the Children's Museum grand opening as well, and so, which we just came from. And who is chairman of this, but Commissioner McCarley also on the, will also will bring up the co-chair lead in this and take it off as soon as she has it open.
As soon as I can open it. Yeah, we're still waiting. Is it not opening? Just getting happy. It's just... I love you. That's even better.
That question is yes.
Okay, so we'll do the municipal boards and committees meeting and call it to order at 9:26. A meeting of the committee is scheduled for this morning. The purpose is to receive and act on the following recommendations. Civil Service Board, there's a recommendation from Human Resources and the Civil Service Director, Mark Farrington, to appoint Kathy Walker to a 3-year term beginning December 5th, 2022 and ending December 4th, 2025. And that is the only item I see that's on our agenda today.
It is, just one.
Yep, so I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Commissioner Madden, would you be a second to that?
Yes, second. Kathy Walker. All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing none, the motion carries. Just a reminder, the city is accepting applications for the following vacancies. Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, we're looking for 2 members, one who is an employer within the jurisdiction and one who is engaged in residential home industry. The Community Redevelopment Area Advisory Board is looking for 2 members, one who owns property or a business or works in the Dixieland CRA district and one in the Midtown CRA district.
And I have a few to add to that list, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
There's actually 3 vacancies on the CRA, so we're looking for 3 people there. Zoning Board of Adjustment and Appeals just had a member resign because his workload and his pride, in his own business was too much to attend the meetings. And then the Pension Board, the General Employee Pension Board is now looking for someone because Tim Hart has moved outside the city.
Kelly, will you send me an email? We'll promote all that through social media as well.
Excellent.
I will.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And before we get started, can I just say how smart our city manager looks in that smashing vest? He's pulled something out of my brand closet. I love it.
He has another 20 minutes he can wear that before it's gone. It's now 69.
All right, so that concludes our committee meeting.
It does indeed. Thank you very much. So we are adjourned and we'll wait for 1 minute and we'll get started on our agenda study.
Kevin?
Don't let this go to your head. Just one thing at a time.
Just your roll. He's just living in it.
Oh, my.
I'm surprised you guys got here after the opening.
Well, determination, so we just didn't want to exclude that, and it was a wonderful opening, and that is a great facility. And it is a dream within a dream, and it is that. All right, so it is 9:30. We'll begin our agenda study. Now, you'll see we start at 9 on Monday, and we'll do a swearing in of Dr. Sam Simmons, and he's at the corner table here, auditing with us. Good to see you, sir. And we'll get you, all of this will come up to speed, and it'll be a piece of cake at some point, not right away, as the nature of the beast. And by the way, Commissioner Walker was at the Children's Museum groundbreaking this morning, so that was fun to have him there. We will have presentations from Daniel Drummond. We do this annually for an LRH update. And then the beautification awards of both residential and commercial. There are no proclamations for this meeting, and this agenda might look a bit light to you as we go through it, but we have a utility committee meeting following it that won't be. And so we'll, as we work through this, that's a good thing to keep in mind. So some of the things you may want to shift that may take a little more time on Monday that could, for explanation, could be good to wait till Monday. So on lots clearing and cleaning, we'll have a list from, and anything new on that? It's typical. Yep. Public hearings, we go to C1, which is public notification of justice's assistance grant.
Is this for Commissioner Simmons' benefit, on the lost cleaning and clearing, the city has a program where we hire a contractor to go out and mow or otherwise clear out junk off of properties that are in bad shape. And so when we do that, we have to pay our contractor, and we then bill the property owner for those costs. And if they don't pay those, our invoice, we then hold what's called an equalization hearing to allow the property owner to object to the process or to how much we're charging them. And if they don't, then those costs ultimately are recorded as a lien in the public record, so they become an encumbrance against that property. And so if that property owner wants to go sell their property, and they're going to, at least if they're going to use third-party financing, they're going to have to pay our lien to get clear title to be able to sell their property. If that doesn't happen, the ultimate end of the process, we do this on a yearly basis, is we put those liens on the tax roll. We're allowed by law to include those liens on the tax roll. And so when the property owner pays their taxes, then the city is paid for its costs that it's incurring going out there and cleaning up the property. So that's part of that process. That's what we're doing here.
It's part of the reason that we did that no dumping sign campaign about a year ago, maybe to try and get people to report dumping, because those are the lots that many times the person has cleaned them and then somebody dumps on it. And then, of course, the need for fencing and to keep the fencing up if people are doing that kind of thing. And so there's an arguable area of intentionality in people's work that has been done, and that's what we run into sometimes. But in the main, there's no objection to these. They know that they're violation. Any other comments on that? All right, on public hearings, let's do the Justice Assistance Grant. Over.
Okay, this is a thing that we've done on an annual basis for a number of years now. We apply for a Justice Assistance Grant through the Department of Justice, and we received our 2022 notice of award relating to that. And our award is $31,089, and as in previous years, the police department intends to use that to partially fund its public information officer position. As part of the grant process, we have to hold a public hearing and allow the public to comment on how we're using those funds. And so this checks that box, and then we'll be able to receive the grant after we go through that process.
Questions on that at all? All right. And another tone setter, Commissioner Simmons, is that when we do this agenda study, this is to try and give us a big overview of what's happening. So it sometimes may seem a little pushed, but if you have a question and you feel too pushed, then we dig in. The goal is that we make sure we have everyone here on Monday, the full expository story that needs to be told on any particular item, and that we have enough on Friday here to be able to know if there's some kind of nuance we want more information on, or I don't think we're addressing this thing, so that we could have time to request someone who's making that presentation, preparing something for us that they might get to us yet today, but certainly have it available in their presentation by Monday. So it's a tone setting while we keep the ball in play to keep moving. Okay? Thank you. So then we go to our CRA report, which often we don't have one, but we do at this meeting.
All right, and the CRA item is a consideration of a tax increment financing agreement with Lakewire Apartments LLC. They are proposing to develop some apartments on the north side of Lakewire. I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to either Chuck or Valerie, our new CRA manager, Valerie Farrell, over here.
Good morning. Good morning. So this is a new residential development on the north side of Lakewire. Please don't be confused with all of the Lakewire development names. This is Lakewire Apartments LLC, and their location there is on Peachtree Street. And the site is approximately 1.6 acres. It consists of 7 parcels. They're developing 2 structures on the site. One will be the apartment building. The other will be a parking garage, structured parking for about 102 spaces, and they will have an amenity deck in the center, a pool, and I think a small cabana that will be going in the center for the apartment buildings. They expect construction to be completed around 2024 in the fall, and this is just a couple of the renderings. It will be 4 stories. All of the corridors will be enclosed, and it looks to be a nice construction for this area. So the TIF agreement is based on 75% for 5 years. Staff did recommend the standard TIF 50% for 5 years. The request was actually made by the applicant, 75% for 10 years. And the basis for that was the increased cost of development for the structured parking, as well as some of the infrastructure that's associated with that type of development. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions on that?
So again, this is an incentive program that the CRA has used for many years now. And the way it works is that a proposed developer comes in and asks for this benefit, and the developer will then construct an improvement on a piece of property. And we take the value under the property appraiser's records, what the value was before they constructed their improvement, and then the value of the property after the improvement, and the difference between those two then generates additional tax revenue that comes into the CRA. And in order to incentivize development, if a developer asks for that benefit, we will basically rebate a percentage of that additional tax revenue that's coming into the CRA over a period of years to offset their costs somewhat. And so,
Which is typically what we do in the blue.
And so, typically what we do is we take the additional tax revenue and apply a 50% factor to it and reimburse that 50% to the developer over a period of 5 years. That's our standard tax increment agreement that we utilize. In this case, the developer asked for 75% of that additional tax revenue over a period of 10 years. And you can see that there's quite a difference in the total incentive package between those two approaches. I don't know if you can read that or not, but it's over 10 years that what the developer requested would have been an incentive of $1,267,000. Under the standard CRA program, it would have been $422,000. The CRA Advisory Board has recommended sort of a hybrid, 75% over 5 years, and that's $633,929.
Questions?
Is this where, I used to sit in Carline there all the time.
The restaurant.
Zors?
Yeah, Zors, that's what I was trying to think of the
Just to
name.
the-
That's what I
Just-
thought.
Just to the east.
Just to the
Got it.
Everything east is Zora's.
Is where the
Yep.
nursing home or assisted.
That's what, okay, they tore that down.
Exactly.
Is that going?
It's still standing.
Or is it still standing?
It's vacant.
They are going to
Okay.
demo it.
Okay.
So an $18 million investment in
Yeah.
that block is a significant investment, you know.
Mayor,
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
thank you. Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Great.
We had good discussion about this one on the CRA Advisory Board, and I think I believe it was a unanimous vote, Valerie, for this hybrid agreement. And just looking at the type of development that would be on this parcel, the density, the parking garage, and the environment that we're in with construction cost. And so I know that as we continue to exceed, or a couple of cases where we have gone above the standard of what the TIF agreement usually is, we felt like this one, it made sense to do a hybrid approach.
Was there a response at all from the developer?
Yes, and we asked as to would this work? Does this, given the environment construction costs, does this make sense for you all to be able to do this, still get the project out of the ground? I believe, is anyone here from?
I did advise them that we were going to be reviewing today and on Monday, so.
And they'll certainly be there Monday.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they were supportive of
Okay,
whatever we could do, but
very good. And the parking garage makes a huge difference in this because of the tightness of that piece of land. So, and that's expensive space to build. Commissioner Reed?
Thank you. Again, it's good to have stuff going on Lakeland West, I guess we want to call it. But invariably, I'm opposed to 10 years. And if y'all recommend the 5 year, 75%, because, we don't want to set a precedent like we did right next door to this property, basically. That's why, so I can probably endorse the 5 years, but anything beyond that, I think we need to strongly consider it as negative component for me.
Okay. All right, any other discussion or questions? And I failed to mention too that Commissioner Music is not here this morning unexpectedly because LCS is going to, as the girls' women's cross-country team is going to state. And so he's working on that. He'll be out as a coach. All right, so, but you will be here Monday, and you will have watched this, by the way. And thank you for watching, Mike. City manager report. That brings us to 5A.
Thank you, sir. I have two items to discuss and then a verbal to make this morning as well. The first item that I have for presentation is a recommendation regarding a task authorization with Goodwin Mills Kaywood, which was formerly Florida Disaster Consulting LLC, for disaster consulting services. This is a task authorization for disaster consulting services in response to Hurricane Ian, and it's proposed in a not-to-exceed amount of $450,000. There is several different services that are provided through this task authorization. FEMA has designated Polk County as eligible for individual and public assistance. Based on our initial damage assessment and the city's prior experience with recovery costs that were related to Hurricane Irma, a not-to-exceed amount of $450,000 has been proposed. And just again to highlight, that's a not-to-exceed amount. It could certainly be less. Funding of these direct administrative costs are eligible for reimbursement through FEMA at a later time. And so the request and recommendation would be to approve the task authorization with Goodwin Mills Kaywood for the not-to-exceed amount as presented. Any questions? Sorry.
All right.
Okay. The next item that I have is regarding a recommendation for approval of a successor contract for the collective bargaining agreement with the International Association of Firefighters, known as IAFF, Local 4173. The proposed amendments included in this agreement represents the conclusion of the negotiation process resulting in this successor agreement that was recently ratified by our Lakeland IAFF employee members. The contract would be a 3-year agreement, so we're happy to announce that we would have a 3-year agreement once approved. Some of the changes I'll just highlight and can provide more detail if needed on Monday, but there will be a modification to tuition reimbursement for employees, increasing to $2,500. That's consistent to what is now being provided for our general employees. There's also would be a modification to the annual floating holiday hours that employees receive. It's currently 12 hours. That would be increased to 24 hours, and that is consistent with a shift for a firefighter or one of the positions that's covered under the collective bargaining agreement. So that would give them a full shift for an annual floating holiday versus a partial. There's also provisions that would allow the firefighter staff or other staff members at the fire department to roll a maximum of 48 hours of deferred holiday to an educational leave bank that they can then use for education purposes. We're also going to be transferring over to a Kelly Day, and I've had a chance, and Chief has had a chance to talk with each of the commissioners about what that means. But basically, that's initially every 3 weeks. There would be 12 hours provided in what's called a Kelly Day, and then eventually that would be transitioning to a 24-hour Kelly Day every 3 weeks worked. Kelly Day is something that is common in fire departments across the country, here in Florida, and certainly in our region. And so for the agencies that we compete with for firefighters and the public safety officials in that arena, that's a competitive feature. is to have that Kelly Day provision, because working those 24-hour shifts, the firefighters and other positions that work those shifts, they work many more hours than a regular employee, and the Kelly Day helps offset some of that. And again, it's very common practice now amongst fire agencies. Other amendments that would occur via the contract related to pay and benefits in year one of the contract, which would be fiscal year 2023, driver engineers would receive a 7% market pay increase. Lieutenants would receive a 7.5% market pay increase, and firefighters would receive a 10% market pay increase. There would also be the provision for a 2.5% merit for all of those who are eligible to receive a merit during that particular year. There are also some of the steps that are in our pay system that will be modified or eliminated as part of the contract provisions. Also, there would be 12 additional firefighters that would be hired during fiscal year 2023, and that's part of the provisions to get to the Kelly Day that I spoke about. In year two of the contract, fiscal year 24, the staff, the collective bargaining members would receive and be provided a 1.5% across the board pay increase and a 2.5% merit increase. A 1.5 and a 2.5 is consistent historically with what we have provided to the general employees as well. That's not every year, as you know, in this current budget. It was greater for the general employees, but historically, the 1.5, 2.5 is what has been provided. And then in fiscal year 3, the collective bargaining members have agreed to receive a Me Too. It is what we call it in fiscal year 2025. And a Me Too would mean that anything that's provided then in terms of ATB and merit to the general employees, the firefighters and those that are bound to this contract would receive the same. So that's what that would mean. And then also there are modifications to some of the article related to health benefits, and so those that it would apply to would receive services from LifeScan Wellness Centers at a maximum cost of $456 per member. So those are the basic and most important details of this collective bargaining agreement, and so it will be recommended that the City Commission approve this proposed successor collective bargaining agreement. And as I mentioned, it was already voted on and ratified by the collective bargaining members of our IAFF. I have Mike Brossart represented the city manager's office in these negotiations. We also have chief and some of the assistant chiefs in the room. It was a very good negotiation process, and we're very pleased to be at this point today recommending the approval of a 3-year contract with the IAFF. So they're here to stand for any questions as well.
Commissioner McCarley, no. I think this represents an excellent work on meeting the needs of both parties' parts, so I highly applaud what you're able to have accomplished. Any other comments at all? All right, and what's your verbal?
Okay, thank you. I wanted to bring to the Commission's attention and also for public knowledge, I've recently authorized and approved and endorsed an emergency contract agreement for emergency roof repairs associated with Hurricane Ian at the airport, at Lakeland Linder International Airport. We did have some significant damage there and needed to have what is a temporary, unfortunately, what is a temporary roof repair, and the amount of that is $196,000. That is above my allowed spending limit, but under emergency conditions, I have the ability to exceed that, and that is certainly the case here. The roof damage is fairly significant. The staff worked very hard to try to find a contractor that could come in quickly and do a permanent roof replacement or repair, and that was unobtainable. We could not find those services this quickly. Certainly, that's a lot of the effect of not only supply chain flooding issues, but all of the work that's occurring down in Southwest Florida and other reasons that's the case. So this would be a temporary roof repair until we can go through the bidding process and have a permanent repair or replacement at some point in the future. Adam Lund and other airport staff is here if there are any questions, but again, this is just to inform you that I did authorize that under the emergency circumstances.
Which building?
It is the Airside Center facility. It's addressed as 3200 Flightline Drive. So it's currently where Murfish Pipe and Supply is underneath, and it also abuts up next to Draken International. So it's right in that roof section. It's about 30,000 square feet of roof that we're doing an emergency repair on to make sure the building is sealed up. The permanent repair is going to be a 60,000 square foot section because the roof was pulled and wrinkled all the way back.
What's the timeline on that second repair?
The second repair, we're currently working through the bid process with purchasing. So once that goes out, we would hope to execute within 30 to 60 days once everything gets buttoned up on our end for contracts. But
You have material supply to wait on and all that kind of thing.
Yes, sir. Yeah. This temporary roof, I believe, is a 6-month.
Yeah, they say it'd be 6 months to a year. The main point is just making it watertight, because we have office space where tenant use that's completely destroyed from water intrusion. So we want to get it temp sealed and watertight to get the repairs done in the office to get our tenants back in their office space.
Commissioner Reese?
This is probably somewhat irrelevant, but it's interesting. Do most of our tenants have their own insurance for the contents inside?
They do, yes, sir.
Is that a requirement of us to make them have that?
It is a requirement, they maintain that.
So we're doing roofs only.
Roofs only, roofs only right now.
Okay, anything else?
That was my question. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
That is all I have, sir. Thank you.
All right, taking us back to City Attorney under 6A1.
Yeah, we have two ordinances for first reading, and they relate to the same property. It's the old Second District Court of Appeal property at the corner of Ingram and Memorial. Chuck?
Thanks, Bobber. On the land use side, the proposal is to change the land use from public institutional to community activity center. On the zoning side, the proposal will change the zoning from O2, which is more of a limited kind of mid-range type office category, to C4, which is nodal, kind of mid to large size commercial like you'd find in a typical public shopping center. So the properties here, southeast corner of Ingram and Memorial. It's just east of Town Center and south of the Lakes Church at the mall. So this just shows the current O2 zoning, what the C4 would look like, so it's not inconsistent with what's immediately to the east or immediately to the west and to the north. Likewise, from the public institutional, we changed to CAC, again consistent with the properties to the west and to the north. We have some screenshots of the site. Of course, the DC8 building has been demolished, and so it's for the most part vacant. Memorial Boulevard is an existing commercial corridor, so the proposal isn't inconsistent with the other uses surrounding the site. The one thing to note is that the C4 zoning does not come with any conditions. This is very unusual as of late that this is not a planned unit development. So the development plan would default back to the land development code. One of the important things to note too is that the site being within the Midtown CRA area this area was studied as part of the original CRA study from back in 2001. And so it does have some language in there about having a consolidated development plan, serve as a gateway. So a lot of the things that, if there were anything that was unclear in the LDC, the CRA plan really helps kind of clarify the intent of what this land use designation in this area would mean. So staff recommends approval. Planning and Zoning Board approved as well. We've received no comments on this, and so it's kind of one that been unusual that there's been no controversy or no concerns related to this proposal.
Is this the sole owner for that parcel?
Yes, sir.
And it's consistent with the PUD 5937?
Correct. It is. Everything is very consistent. Of course, the intervening remaining public institutional land uses, the former Citrus Commission building, which is now Epic Church. That's the only intervening property between this site and the self-storage facility with retail that was recently approved over at Lake Parker Avenue. So this is continuing kind of the trend, while also not creating, and this was a concern of staff, is that if we were after a allowed a C2 or C1 type zoning category here, that we would kind of perpetuate more strict commercial up and down Memorial instead of having something that is truly kind of nodal and recognizing that Ingram and Memorial is a significant intersection.
No, it's a good intersection. Questions, comments, Commissioner
Thank you.
Reed?
That was my question, Chuck. Why do we want C4 versus C2? Again, it takes away our control to some degree.
Actually, C4 creates more of a unified access, gives us a lot more control for this size of a site than a typical C2. C2 allows pretty much any type of retail, which, you've got already some underperforming retail up and down the Memorial Boulevard corridor. So one of the concerns that staff had is one, perpetuating a strip linear, strip commercial type pattern, but also cannibalizing maybe some of the marginal uses in the rest of the corridor that could develop into something or be encouraged to develop into something more modern. So C4 was kind of a good balance between what the developer was looking for and kind of staff's initial inclination to go towards a PUD where we would get into more detail in terms of site design and access specifics. And when we stepped back and we looked at what the Land Development Code already would restrict a C4 use to, and given that the site is on Memorial Boulevard and would be subject to DOT permitting, we were comfortable that a lot of the concerns that we would typically have would be addressed just through our normal process and through the normal code.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
And just on the process, Florida law requires when you adopt an ordinance that you have two different readings of the ordinance title. With the typical ordinance, you read the title of the ordinance only at the first reading, and there's no public comment received. It's kind of serves just as a notice to the public that, hey, we're considering this, and then 2 weeks later, we're going to possibly adopt this ordinance. So at the second reading, it's actually a public hearing where we receive public comment, and the city commission then votes on it. So for this one, this will just be a first reading, so I'll just read the title into the record, and we would typically not receive any public comment on something like this. There's certain exceptions to that we'll see going forward, but that's the standard ordinance adoption process.
It's something that is super complicated on a first reading. We might have that developer present, and they may, just to give that initial overview so that everybody can hear concerns and objections. All of that second reading is really what that's for.
And so this is, again, these two ordinances are related. The first one is the comprehensive plan amendment. That's kind of an overall policy statement of the city and what we want for the future. And under state law, that's the first thing that you consider. And then you have a more granular, detailed zoning ordinance that has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So we're having to amend the comprehensive plan before we adopt the zoning ordinance. So they have to be consistent under state law, and that's what we're doing, why we're doing two different ordinances.
Okay, which is the second. And so then we approve the proposed lots and clearing, which we brought up earlier as a separate equalization board at this point. So that's, equalization board is different from the commission. We break out of the commission meeting, go to equalization board, look at the lots cleaning and clearing, come back as a commission. Then as a commission, this is where the commission approves what was done as an equalization board earlier. All right, and then C, miscellaneous reports.
The first item is for information only, no action is required. It's the quarterly legal fee report. We're at about the same level as we were at this time last year. Resolving some of these collective bargaining contracts will help that number to go down. There's also just lingering litigation that we're having to defend in that. I'll stand for any questions you might have.
So in this case, this is an example of additional legal work we have done that's really outside the scope of our staff, not necessarily in capacity or in capability, but in capacity to get things done, and where there might be a more resident expert in a particular topic. And so during the course of the year, we will have those expenses. This is a way to allow the commission to kind of monitor to make sure we know what we're spending, why, and where.
The second item is...
Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, sorry.
What are we doing with Mark McDonald?
He filed a quiet title action to try to knock out the deed restriction.
On Lake Collinsworth?
Right. It's not a lawsuit for damages, but it is he's trying to challenge the deed restriction to knock that out.
Okay.
That's a particular parcel question that we had an objecting party. Okay, 2.
Number 2 is an agreement with N-Pipe Technology for them to provide odor control technology and services for the odor in our collection system. I'll let is it David, is that you?
Yeah, that's mine. So essentially, for many years, since 2004, we use this technology as a microbial type chemical that we put into gravity manholes or lift stations, and it combats the bad bacteria, if you will, and reduces the hydrogen sulfide gas, which is the offensive odors that we have. So we've been using this for many, many years, but we're bringing it for you for basically to be a 5-year contract over. It'll be a 2-year, I'm sorry, and then some 3-year extensions.
3-year with
after
3
that.
one-year
Right.
options.
So,
And 3% cap.
correct. Yes, sir.
And this is historically what you've used?
Yes, sir.
So it's just
And
continuing?
it's a proprietary process, and so it is a sole source. We weren't unaware of any other process that provides this kind of odor control. We've used it since 2004. This is the first price increase we've seen since 2010. So it's pretty effective.
Probably stinks to do otherwise. Okay, yes.
It's ironic, I was riding around last night, didn't have anything to do. I was down in Wood Lake area, and we got many getting calls down that Wood Lake area, and that it was ironic. It was
From time to time, we do. It depends on what's going on at the Glendale plant. That's in close proximity, and which way the wind's blowing, and all kinds of different things that can happen at the plant. If we get a certain slug of bacteria or things that are going on, that's the process can get upset a little bit. I mean, there are highs and lows, if you will, with the odors at the plant.
Do you use this at the plant level at all, or that counters what you're trying to get done?
Right. It doesn't. It kind of starts the process, believe it or not, before it gets to the plant. But no, we don't use it at the plant itself. Though we do have other odor control measures at the plant. There's scrubbers and things like that at the plant that we do use to try to mitigate those.
Okay. Any other questions? Next.
Next is a task authorization with Communion Rivets to redirect some wastewater flow from the southwest wastewater pump station into the newer English Oaks force mains. Robbie, you want to describe that one?
Yeah, so we previously brought the engineering component to you. We've completed that engineering, gone out to bid now. This is somewhat of a minor change at the pump station to redirect the flow. Once all the flow comes into the southwest pump station, it gets pumped into another gravity section that goes on to Glendale. The flow is so high in that section, and really has to do with the slope going from Edgewood down to Glendale, that the velocities are high, or people have almost no ability to do any maintenance. To give us some redundancy, some ability to do different things, we're going to redirect it over to the English Oaks force main, and we'll be able to do a lot of maintenance on that segment over the next few years, however long we want. I was a little concerned to do that and put it into English Oaks force main because I don't want to use up the capacity that's for Southwest Lakeland. And so this is just the ability for us to transfer some flows. We can take English Oaks and send it to Southwest Station and do different things. So usually we have one path, and when the line breaks, it's a problem. Here, by having this ability to go a couple different directions, gives staff some flexibility to maintain problems out in the field. So this is maybe 100 feet of pipe, a couple of valves, all located inside the pump station, and when they're done, we'll open and close certain valves and redirect it.
So this was bid out, and Communion Rivets is out of Tampa. They were the low bidder at $260,000. Kilgore out of Lakeland was at $405,000. And this is going to be work that's already budgeted in the Water Utilities FY23 budget, and is slated to be completed in summer of 2023.
Excellent. Good flexible capacity. Number 4.
All right, number 4 is related to the ARPA wastewater project that we've been talking about a lot over the last year or so. This is a proposed contract with Garney Companies for design build services for phase 1 of the project to replace the existing 36-inch western trunk gravity line. Rodney, I'm going to let you describe that one as well.
Okay. So this is a 36-inch line that the segment we're going to replace runs from Herschel, which is up near the West Lakeland Adult School, all the way down to the southwest pump station. It's about 13,000 feet of pipe that is generally at capacity and also having some failures that had been lined in the past. We previously issued an RFQ and shortlisted these two companies, brought that to the commission. Due to the ARPA funding, we had to get a pricing component added back in, so we went back out to those two companies, to the shortlisted companies, and got an RFP, worked through that. It was still a qualification-based selection. Pricing was a component of that. My star is missing this morning. Commissioner Music was on our committee, and so I think he'll be able to kind of inform you of what he saw there. He was thrown into it late in the game. We had already been through the first RFQ, and he just got dumped a proposal and said, here, grade this, when he doesn't really know what's going on. So we brought him up to speed, had some great discussion at that committee meeting, able to get Garney selected. We then went forward with establishing a contract with them. That's on page 2 of the memo. You can kind of see the pricing. There's tasks 1 through 7. Tasks 6 and 7 are actually part of phase 2. So the way we're going to do this contract, we've selected Garney to do professional, progressive design build. That's a little bit different than our normal traditional design bid build. That was going to take too long to achieve the design and the construction and use the ARPA funds. Also, knowing that there's likely to be a lot of conflicts that we're going to find, we can't just take the existing pipe out of service. It has to remain in service. So we're going to have to find a different route. We may encounter other utilities. The gravity line has a slope and a direction, and if anything's in the way, it's going to have to move, and we're going to have to pay for that. The traditional design bid build contractor would likely sit down if we find something unexpected and say, I'm in delay until you solve the problem. With this progressive design build, we all get to sit down, talk together and say, look, let's work as a team, a partnership, and figure out a way to fix this quickly so that you can keep building so that we can meet our schedule. We're doing this in 3 phases. This is phase 1, which is the preliminary engineering and the route study. We don't quite know the right way to go yet, so that's what's going to be analyzed. They're going to look at, try and find conflicts in the field, things that are known. We'll always have the unknowns, right-of-way issues, traffic, neighborhoods, look at all those things, settle on a route. So that's what phase 1 will do. Phase 2, once we know the route, then they can tell us how much it's going to cost to engineer it. Right now, they don't know what it's going to cost, and I didn't want to just bring some guesstimate. So phase 2 will be the actual engineering. When they come out of that, they will provide us a guaranteed maximum price. We'll bring that back to the commission, and then to get phase 3 approved, which will be for construction. Tasks 6 and 7 are actually kind of phase 2 activities. It's a way to compress that schedule. And while we're working out the contracting for the engineering, they can go ahead and start doing all the surveying of the final route and start doing a little bit of digging and figuring out the underground utilities. So that's how that's structured. In reality, the preliminary engineering is about $350,000. This contract value is for $781,000. So $350,000 of that is for kind of those phases.
What do you do with the old pipe when this is all done?
I haven't completely decided yet. In talking with staff, it's in pretty bad shape. It would cost a lot of money to rehab it. It's not off the table yet. Might see if there's any other companies or utilities that might want to use it as a route for electrical or fiber or some other beneficial use. Worst case, we'll grout it, and so we don't have any other future failures and sinkholes, or not really sinkholes, but holes in road or pavement or whatever. So we don't want to just throw it away, but we'll assess that as we work through that.
We'll certainly have the ability to take a good look. Commissioner McCarley.
So when you guys are in that first phase and you're planning and looking at traffic, like who's at the table talking about that? Like when you're looking at sites and where you're going to do that, like do you look at a calendar and be like, oh, summer might be a good time because we don't have as many people here? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, everything will be on the table. We'll try and reach out to any stakeholders we can to get information and learn and talk with them and share, because this is going to be pretty destructive when we go to build it. I mean, we're talking about a 30 to 50-inch pipe that's going to be a huge trench.
Right.
If those don't fit on the sides of the road, we'll be going down the middle of the road, closing traffic, and the schedule is going to kind of dictate that we can't slow down. We just just have to push through. Being gravity pipe that goes at a certain slope, you don't really want to jump around because
Right.
you need to go at that
Correct.
slope, and if you
Right.
deviate and come back, you might find out there's a difference and lines don't meet together, so.
It's just kind of like when I first got here and I talked about sitting in Carline a lot, and we decided to do a sidewalk by Lawton Childs the first week of school. The school starts the same time every year. You know what I mean? Like, are there some ways that we can circumvent traffic? You know, even the Lake Hollingsworth project right now that push traffic, totally
Yep.
south. Like, can we just try to mitigate that as much as
Yeah,
possible?
yep.
Because those are the texts I get,
Well,
and I just,
Yeah, we'll have to, and then I've also reached out to Public Works, and as we
Perfect.
kind of once we know the route,
Yeah.
talk to them in case there's any improvements they want to do along that same
One
route.
dig,
If we're gonna
let's do one
tear
dig.
it up, yeah.
I love
Yep.
one dig.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Reed?
Could you give me a general idea of the current route the pipe goes? I mean, I know for Hartsville, I know where the Southwest plant, but how does it get to the
Right. I did bring a USB. Can somebody plug this into the computer and pull it up? I forgot to include it in the memo, so you already have it.
Always bring a map.
We like that. Helps us visualize.
Yeah, I took this out of Garney's first proposal to show that they had given some thought to it. So the blue line is the existing route, north is up, and
Now north.
yeah, north is to the right now. So that's up near Herschel. You're getting close to Olive Street, the West Area Adult School. You can see this line goes under trailer parks as it just begins to flow to the south, goes around and through some other trailer parks down near the southern end, which is a problem. We never have been happy about that. It's under trailers, and just things happened, back years ago. So we're going to try and find a better route. They threw out, without really too much analysis, when they were doing the RFQ, to say what's another route. So the brown line represents something they thought might work. The challenge will be you have all these smaller branch lines in all these neighborhoods going to the blue line, and you just can't easily redirect it somewhere else. So there's going to be a lot of construction along the existing route, but then anything that needs to be diverted over to the new line or somehow get it at new line, maybe we utilize it for smaller flows because there's just no other way to do it. May have to throw some pump stations in and then some force mains to redirect it back over to the new line. So this is a extremely complicated job. It's taken us a lot of work to get where we are, and staff's worked really hard, and I'm really happy to be here today to get this phase one finally moving.
The bottom blue line that goes around that little offset, what was that about?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it. Whenever I see things like that in our system, it tells me there must have been something in the way that they needed to go around. Guessing that this line was probably put in 50s or 60s timeframe. But yeah, they found something and said, no, this makes sense to go around. Could be a ditch system, canal, something in that area. Some of that is Sand Gully. I do know there's some ditches running north-south on Sand Gully.
Are we gonna need to buy right away in some trailers?
Perhaps, yes. Easement acquisition, right-of-way acquisition will be in here. Another reason to go with design build, because if we have to stop and go through eminent domain, that's a long, long process. We hope that we don't do it. We've had some discussions with them. We typically are involved in that. Sometimes the consultant or contractor will go out and negotiate and get that, either on our behalf or, ultimately it's given to us, but it might go better to know that it's not the city coming to take their land. So there's different approaches. So we're trying to leave as many flexibilities as possible.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Robbie. Will there be any disruption during phase 1 and 2 to traffic roads neighborhood, or would that all come when the
If there's any disruption, I would call it minor. They are going to go and survey all the existing manholes, so they'll open that up, and we have allowance in here for any manholes that are somehow covered by asphalt or not found for the contractor to have to maybe bust up some asphalt. There may be maintenance of traffic. They recognized and they mentioned that some work may have to happen at night if it's too disruptive to traffic, so they'll do any surveying and stuff, depending on where it's at night if it becomes necessary.
Okay, good to know.
And in the ARPA fund use for this project, when do we have to be done?
We have to use that by the end of 2026, and so we're going to use these funds first. Just full disclosure, and I'll go ahead and mention it. In the proposals, whenever they came back, Garney came back at $38.1 million. That was a big number. The very initial estimate that I did, and I kind of just did it on a napkin and gave it, Bill says, I need something. I gave it to him. And then he's here talking to you guys, getting ARPA funds, and I said, what? That wasn't a number to go to everybody. I didn't really put any effort into that number, and I had guesstimated around $22 million. And so I think we got to 17 and had some existing funds.
And prior to expense increases as well. That's on the slide.
Yeah. So as a component of using these ARPA funds, we had to include price in this qualification. And it was really, they gave us the price and we just scored it, and it was a score amongst many other things. So Garney came in at $38.1 million. Killebrew came in at $19.9 million, and we struggled with that a lot. And what that makes, that is a lot of money. Right now, we've done a better estimate, and we're at $28.9 million is where we think it's at. When the committee reviewed that pricing and discussed it in the meeting, the consensus was that Garney said, look, here's how much it might cost, and we're going to do our best to value engineer it and bring it down. The committee also felt that when Killebrew gave their cost at 19.9, they said, here's the cost that you haven't given us any information. This is the best we can do. And when you tell us more information, we'll adjust the price accordingly. So our take was that that number is going to go up. Yeah. We're hopeful that Garney's will come down. Our estimate being at 30 million, I think it'll be somewhere in the middle. When we get the GMP, this will be more like an open book. There'll be quotes from various contractors that'll come in. We'll be able to see those. So it's not just Garney, go give me a number. It's something that'll be shared and fully vetted for us to see, and may even use our purchasing staff to at least receive those proposals that'll go back to Garney for final evaluation.
Just if I can, just a couple of comments related to what was just said. You'll remember back when we were talking about the ARPA funding, the commission did not want to use all of the funding toward the project. There were other things that the commission wanted to do. We knew then, even though it was a very rough estimate, that even what we were going to receive in the full ARPA funding would not pay for this entire project. So we've known all along that there would need to be other methods to take on the financial implications of this project. So even though it was estimated, it really didn't matter in the scheme of things in terms of how much was allocated out of ARPA. That was a commission decision. Even if you had allocated the entire amount, it wouldn't have paid for the whole project, and we knew that all along.
Got it. Any other comments from commissioners? All right. Now that brings us to number 5.
All right, number 5 is at a totally different scale than that one. This is just an indemnification agreement with Polk County. The city, as part of its efforts to attract Amazon to the County Line Road Amberjack location, applied for some DOT economic development grant funds and was successful in receiving those, and those were to provide the improvements necessary to accommodate Amazon's facility, and that provided for improvements both to the intersection of County Line Road and Amberjack, as well as County Line Road and US 92. So the city's actually performing the improvements at County Line Road and US 92, even though County Line Road is a county road and US 92 is a federal road or state road. What needs to happen here is that the signalization at County Line Road and US 92 needs to be synchronized with the signalization at County Line Road and Amberjack Boulevard. So we're going to have to actually bury some conduit between those two locations. It's got to run underneath County Line Road, including CSX right-of-way that crosses County Line Road there just south of the US 92 County Line Road intersection. And that will ultimately be the county facilities, even though the city is constructing those. So CSX is requiring the county, as the owner of that road, the operator of that road, to enter into an encroachment agreement with CSX. And as part of that, the county has to indemnify CSX from any damages to their right-of-way facilities. So the county in turn is saying, okay, the city's actually doing these improvements, so we're going to require the city to indemnify the county. So this is what this agreement does, is it's kind of downstream of the initial encroachment agreement. We're indemnifying the county many problems that might arise, any damages to CSX's right-of-way facilities. And then even further downstream, we will actually require our contractor who's doing this project, Cobb, to indemnify both the city and the county. And so this indemnification agreement requires the city to indemnify the county, and also requires that the city make its contractor indemnify the county, and separately, we also require our contractor to indemnify us. So it's a little bit convoluted, but it's ultimately simple.
That's why you're an attorney. Okay, so.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so this one's on consent agenda. I don't know if we've discussed consent agenda items yet or not, but these are usually lower dollar items that are not going to be controversial, and we'll just have them on consent agenda, describe what they are to the commission at agenda study, but then on Monday, unless anyone wants to pull an item off the consent agenda, the city commission will just vote on all the consent agenda items at the very beginning of the meeting, just say approved, and there'll be no further discussion of a consent agenda item.
So two reasons for that. Low dollars that make it easy to do, but sometimes we take even a low dollar one off a consent agenda if we think the explanation would be benefit to have as a discussion for the public to hear since it's in a meeting, so that you're not ever making it look like anything's being railroaded or anything that is, but this would be pretty non-contentious. So this would be a good example of one that would stay typically, unless somebody has an objection. Okay, seeing none, we'll leave that on consent. All right.
Then we have several utility items that we have teed up for utility committee consideration at 11, so we don't have those staff members in it and at the moment. They'll address those at 11. I think that's all.
We put those all at the last section, so those are those miscellaneous C-123s. So we'll go over those as utility committee, and so we don't do it twice. And that will be done. And that takes us to 10, which is mine, A, which is the city attorney and city manager compensation, following our 10/14/22 annual review workshop. We did our annual reviews, we passed on that information, we had that updated with Don Selvage. We didn't go back and address compensation for the city manager and the city attorney, which typically would be what the across-the-boards follow, which is in this particular time, and this would be effective October 1st if we wanted to make it retroactively, a 5%, 2.5% merit. So comments or questions on that? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. And so that's historically what the commission has done, just follow that?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other comments?
2.5.
So 5 and 2.5, 5 and 2.5. The across the board is 5, the general is 5, and then the 2.5 is merit. And that's because we had a delay in increases, during the early period that we were heavier this year in the general. So we're making up for lost ground. It's interesting as we do all these pay studies, whenever we get done with the pay study, it's always what was and not what's happening currently as you go forward. So, and the lag rate of which probably is accelerating to some degree, and certainly in the gravity of some of those percentages we go on. It has nothing to do with this. That's just a general comment, I think, as we take a look at those going forward. Any other questions? Okay, so then we would vote on that then. That'd be a voice vote. Right. And also whether to go back to 10-1. Yeah. Okay. No comments. We'll wait till commission meeting to do that. All right, then we can start our utility meeting at 11. We have time to share anything on a commission basis that you might want to share here and not wait until Monday to share. Yes, sir, Commissioner Reed.
Hunting season opens tomorrow, and ducks are going to come up soon. So what's the status on our duck for about 30 days?
Right. And I think I've talked to all of y'all about the Attorney General issue, and speaking to the attorney with that office in charge of their opinions, they've indicated that they would punt that back to the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, so I think that's just kind of moving us into a circle. So I don't think that's going to be the productive approach to move forward. So right now, I mean, the situation's the same as it was last January. We've obviously considered a restricted hunting area, and at the moment, there's not a desire to move in that direction. That would be applying for an area where hunting would not be allowed. It's a very specifically legally described area off of the shore of Lake Parker. It would only apply to Lake Parker. And that would require a hearing before the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. So that's still one approach you could take. I'm not sure what the consensus is on that. I mean, well, I think that the consensus was to not pursue that approach for now. So that's one option. Seeking an opinion from the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission would be another option, although we've already had significant conversations with them, and I don't think that's going to change the status quo. And then another option is a declaratory judgment action. And the final action is nothing, and not to take action.
I was wondering, I know that's probably our position. I don't think it's going to be their position, but the citizens. So I wasn't at the last association meeting, but I get rumblings a little bit from the neighborhoods and so, but it may pop up again at our meetings, but I didn't know. I'd like to kind of squash it in before somebody gets hurt or it comes back again when they really start raising cane. So, but I don't know what the next step is if we want to do anything, but I just thought it's going to pop up again in another 30, 60 days. So.
It certainly could, and our hope would be that people would use good discretion. Hunters would use good discretion.
You would hope so as well.
Yes.
But it doesn't seem to be
Well, they have a new opportunity. Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that was kind of our hope, is that we could have some neighborly conversations between the opposing parties and let that take its course and be hopeful that we could see what happens this season before we did anything dramatic.
Okay. Anything else, Jared? Anything to add to that? All right. Okay. Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. The new stop signs that were added on New Jersey Road, I see Paul nodding his head. He lives nearby. I was just curious for an update on how we're monitoring that, how well that's working. I had heard, maybe others as well, from a resident before the stop signs were installed who lives across New Jersey, who works from home, and said, I heard 2 accidents within a couple of days, and there were people who were part of the detour. Kevin says there were 3. So just curious how, now that we've installed those stop signs, how we're monitoring that for safety, traffic flow. I'd love to hear a little bit more. I told the resident I would come back and
Everyone's
share.
saying not it.
Yeah, Greg, I don't know if you have any information on that. It's something that we also, if Chief Garcia was available and we can certainly make him available, we could get some more information.
Okay.
Yeah, the signs were put in I think, between 1 and 2 o'clock yesterday, and the early reports are, I think it's from the gentleman you're speaking of, was that he's already saw immediate better behavior or operation of that intersection.
Easier to turn out,
Right.
turn left if you're on east.
So our staff typically would try to go through that area a couple times a day or whatever, unless we have reports of something else going on. I think we're still looking, and I don't know, as of yesterday, last I knew, signs hadn't been placed on Cleveland Heights, which we felt were needed. And so we were following up with water utilities to make sure that occurred as well. And but we do have a camera at the intersection of Cleveland Heights and Edgewood that we're able to utilize to observe traffic and see what's going on from there. We don't have anything, unfortunately, at east in New Jersey, but so we're, I guess, actively taking a look at it a couple times a day.
Okay.
Unless we hear, obviously, something going on, we'll respond sooner to see if there's something we can do to either tweak the MOT or, and of course.
What's the MOT, Greg?
I'm sorry, maintenance of traffic. That'd be the signage, the detour route. Unless, a lot of times too, it's just bad driver behavior, which we need LPD to help us with that.
You don't have to raise your hand, Commissioner.
The confusing part is there's little stop signs at each spot where the bicycles are supposed to stop. I see people stopping there. And then all of a sudden I came that way last night and
When you were riding around with...
And people were running the stop sign. Because it was confusing. This is a substantially larger stop sign than the smaller ones that are posted. The little ones are about this big. Every time you come to a little road for the bicycles to stop, then you come to one great big one.
Right.
And versus detour, which is somewhat confusing, but that might be.
And you've learned to ignore the bike stop signs earlier.
Yeah, because, you have to learn to ignore those flags.
Yeah, we have placed flags on the stop signs to try to attract attention.
How long was the, what are they doing on the, what are they fixing down on Lake Lawrenceburg to make this?
The water main, right. And I don't know the exact duration.
It was 6 weeks duration from the start. We're 2 weeks in, so we have about another month.
And as is usually the case, we have staff all over the city who are listening to this meeting. And so our Water Utility Director, Bill Anderson, just texted me to say that yesterday they were working with LPD to provide more of a presence and patrols in that particular area, during this initial part of the work that's being done.
And I think that would be my request, is that we just continue to monitor how this is working with the new stop signs compared to how it was before. And if tweaks need to be made, and I'll certainly pass on feedback that I hear as well.
Yeah, because New Jersey is very backed up at this point.
Yeah.
And just to add on to that, I spoke at a thing a few weeks ago, one of the neighbors that lives off of New Jersey on Atlanta, closer to Edgewood, that there's a lot of cut through in there before this happened, and I hope there's not an onslaught now with this higher volume of traffic with Lake Hollingsworth closed going through that and trying to circumvent the Edgewood, New Jersey intersection too. So just to put that on the radar, I hadn't sent an email about it, but that might be something we consider, because it is a ripple effect. I mean, every time we block something or have to change something, it impacts these other areas.
And you can see the owners of the yards are standing in there looking at traffic, watching traffic. That's how you know it's.
I got pictures of the flags on those stop signs, so I got credit for doing that. I said I didn't do that because I had been texted about it in the morning. Like our staff took care of it.
Any other comments on that or questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you for the quick
Yeah.
attention. I think that's
That was helpful.
what I have relayed to people is we're working on it. It's a new route, and there are challenges when you're redoing a water main, but we certainly want to prioritize safety as well as make sure traffic can move through that road as efficiently as possible.
Commissioner Alex Simmons, do you have anything to share? Any topic at all? All right.
I have this is a happy text that I got, so I'd like to share that.
Check text.
This is one of our residents where they had some water issues, and she said on Friday morning, within an hour of the break, they had a water line break that's a city line onto their property. Michael Borg, the manager of water distribution, had reached out to me via telephone. He was incredibly thorough in explaining exactly what happened and what the city's plan for remediation is. This resident was in North Carolina, so I just want to give kudos to Michael. She went on to talk about everything that he had done to work with them because the water was draining onto there and it affected their house's water, and how professional and thorough he was. So kudos. Hopefully Michael's listening. I know Bill Anderson's listening. And
If not, we'll pass it on. He's
Yeah.
a longtime employee manager in water distribution and does a fantastic job.
She said he's amazing in customer service, and because they've had several challenges that have continued on this same thing that's been happening, but he's just stayed in touch and in good communication with them. And she said, I know people are always quick to come to you with complaints, so I thought it might be nice to hear some good news. Amen. Thank you. Repeat. Keep it coming, etc. So good job to him.
Yeah, if you go back to Ian and our electrical teams working to restore power, most of those stories about how people work to help provide access are so redeeming. We had a few, though, where there were citizens who didn't want anybody on their yards. You know, they wanted linemen only to walk through the pole lines. And I think in the issue to always trying to protect what's kind of normal in our property and what's private versus what's for greater good, you know, we have to have some kind of flexibility and elasticity sometimes when we are in a problem where general good is more valuable than our grass. And it's disappointing to me, frankly, when we find out that we have some people more concerned about that than others. And so to the extent that that can be an encouragement to someone to be more flexible, that maybe wasn't so much, I would appreciate them doing so and considering that. And the other side of that coin is that we do a great job of making certain we restore what happens to the extent possible, especially in light of what's going on and have historically. So give some grace. Grace matters, and thinking of others helps do that. Any other comments or questions? All right, we've burned up.
I was going to say it for Monday, but I'll say it today and Monday. Just the team that we had from the city of Lakeland that attended the Safe Streets Day at RP Funding Center yesterday, particularly it was my first time getting to know our interim director over in traffic operations. And, you know, she told me about her move from Connecticut to Lakeland and just what she loves about Lakeland and the differences. And, you know, she's been impressed to see Angelo. He stopped in, and so that was fun to see him. And just all the guys down there in the traffic ops team, you know, showing off what they do every day to the group that toured, and then also, you know, spent a little extra time with the ADA, Jenny and the team under their tents, you know, as we went around to all the tents to walk the line, the sobriety test with the goggles that make you, you know, impaired, and, you know, watch the rollover of the car and just the simulation for the motorcycle, just a lot of good perspective building things, like, okay, and getting in that truck to see how limited their view is, that they cannot see at all the truck behind them, stay away from big trucks on the road, you know, just like what you're saying, everyone kind of working in community to give each other grace and to slow down and to make our streets safer. It's still, you know, always so disappointing to hear that, you know, Florida's the worst in the country with regard to pedestrian bike safety, and, you know, just the fatalities and the passionate story that Melissa told, you know, why she's, you know, doing what she does at a national level to advocate for safer streets, and her own husband being, you know, killed in the crash with the red light runner. So I thought it was a really good day just to remind us of what we're doing, and that, you know, like, I know Commissioner McCarley says this a lot, just with the mind shift, you know, it's like when you've lived a certain way for a long time, it's really difficult. But I think that just constant drip campaign of all of us, you know, repeating the messaging, you know, of how important it is for us to, you know, to correct some things, you know, in the city of Lakeland with our codes, and why sidewalks are important, and why we're always talking about, you know, riding our bikes and walking and transit and other options, and riding the squeeze. The people who came in from out of town who were on the squeeze with me, they're like, I haven't been in Lakeland in years, totally transformed. And they, you know, I said, what people don't realize how close RP Funding Center hotels are to the downtown. So we took it all the way from RP Funding to the traffic ops, you know, past the joinery, and it's so quick, you know. But so the squeeze, I think, is such a great transition. You know, you might not walk, but when you're just in that open air golf cart, you go, God, this is close, you know, this is walkable, you know, versus a car.
It makes it more intimate.
Yeah, so, and just how beautiful the bridge is, you know, to come from the hotels across the bridge and into our downtown. So anyway, I thought it was a great day, and just wanted to, you know, give kudos to our team, you know, heard over and over again, you know, from other people in other counties, our team, you know, their excellence and their professionalism and their best practices, so.
Very highly respected, and I would echo that. And I had one little pivot off of that when in Mind Shift while I was, which City Manager Truss and I talked about last night. When I was there, I was thinking, as I'm thinking about our committee assignments, our task forces and councils, something we have nothing that we do is ADA Safe Streets. And we could really have one of the commissioners
That's a good idea.
who wants to be
Yeah.
on that committee, so that when there's a Jenny Sykes meeting, we have somebody present. When there's a Safe Streets meeting, we have somebody present that wants to be in where that's a passion. So how are we connecting real wheelchair routes and opportunities, and what are the restrictions and the things we can be more aggressive on? Because you go through this list of things: aging and senior, arts, community engagement, Hispanic advisory, Lift Lakeland, but nothing ADA. So if that's something you have an interest in, let me know, because as we work on this, that may be.
Well, Mayor, I would hope that, like, accessibility, you talk about ADA, that's why I spent extensive time with the ADA folks, is, riding my bike recently, for transportation, not for exercise. Like, I'm not a cyclist at all. I feel more like a wheelchair, you know what I mean? Like, I'm afraid to death to cross certain intersections.
Right.
And so we talked about, how you pivot from being more the pedestrian on the sidewalk and then following the pedestrian rules where it's safer. And then when you get on the road, because there's a bicycle path and you feel, safer on the roads, and then you're following the traffic rules. And just kind of having to do that, and trying different routes downtown to get your bearings. And I have felt that often, like, this is how people feel, in a wheelchair when they're going down our sidewalks. I feel as vulnerable, with the cars and such. So I think that there are parallels. Maybe you think, well, how many people, are there in Lakeland, Florida, who, are in a wheelchair and have this accessibility situation? But I think if we would get more traction and leverage if we started, it's if you're walking or if you're on a bike, that you feel just as vulnerable if the sidewalks are not, if there's cracks in the sidewalk and they're not, safe routes. So I would say that if you're going to do something like that, I would hope that it would also include pedestrian and bikes as well.
Would.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it'd be ADA Safe Streets kind of combo, which is all of that. And that's a place where we can make sure we're listening well. And there's so much that's been done by the city, by the way, that I would quickly comment. When you think of just the intersections that are being worked for the ramps and the expense of that and the numbers of them and the ability that you do to click those off all the time to get that done, it's wonderful work. And it's tedious and time consuming and expensive.
And expensive is a point to highlight, because oftentimes people in the public, excuse me, people in the public, they hear about the projects that are discussed and the cost and the contracts here, and they sometimes think, man, we're just giving money away, we're just getting gouged. But it's a lot of times it's things like ADA compliance that adds to that cost, but to do it right and to accommodate for those who need those accommodations, it's the way we should do business.
And it's fun to see how Parks and Recs has added the ability for boaters, for people in wheelchairs to be able to go on some of the pontoon boats and be on the lakes. And Eddie Jacobs or Eddie Hall, has done such a great job at that. And in terms of raising that visibility. And that's exciting to me because it's honoring everyone. And that's a contingent of our public as well. Okay. So thanks for all your work there.
1,800 rides on the squeeze in October.
1,800.
Just FYI.
So that's just great.
That's the record now, right? That's good.
Good time of year, too, going into getting more. Maybe adding a third car.
All right, why don't we take a break? It's 10:43 and we'll be back. We'll start at 11.
Yes. We're here.